Hello and welcome to State of the Union. I'm Stefan Grobe in Brussels. The war between Israel and Hamas keeps poisoning the atmosphere in our societies. The number of hate crimes has risen to alarming levels. Examples? Last month, the Netherlands recorded an 800% increase of anti-Semitic incidents. Austria, a 300% rise. In the second half of October, the number of anti-Muslim incidents in Germany has increased to 3 a day on average. This week, the European Commission urgently unveiled a set of measures and policy recommendations to tackle the dark demon of hate. But that's not all.
With the war between Israel and Hamas and the polarization it causes in our society, with the upcoming holiday season, there is a huge risk of terrorist attacks in the European Union. We will now make available additional 30 million euros for protection.
That money is allocated specifically for the protection of churches during the Christmas period, but also of synagogues and mosques. And then there is the public discourse. Politicians need to weigh their words carefully in order not to be accused of bias and taking sides with either Israel or the Palestinians. Otherwise, there could be an immediate backlash, as EU High Representative Josep Borrell found out this week.
What we are witnessing in Gaza is another carnage. How many victims? We don't know. Nobody knows. Someone estimates it's about 15,000, but I'm afraid that below the rubble of the houses destroyed, it must be many more, with a high number of children. So, sorry?
People are leaving the room. Keep on going.
People are leaving the room?
Yes.
Why? Maybe I said some inconvenience.
For many, talking about the conflict in the Middle East, at home or in public, has become a frustrating exercise. And the EU's answer to the war is being seen as disappointing one way or the other. Disappointing is also the word that best describes the mood of climate activists who follow the COP28 conference in Dubai. Not only are they angry at the fossil fuel deal-making of the host country, but they generally believe that the conference has not lived up to its ambitions. While climate change is a global crisis, it impacts poorer countries in the global south particularly. The International Rescue Committee, founded at the call of Albert Einstein, has made lobbying on behalf of those countries the core of its climate work. Earlier, Christopher Pitcher spoke with the IRC's president and CEO, David Miliband.
Your organisation has a new report out this week, which is focusing on what needs to be done at COP28 to help vulnerable countries and communities. Can you just tell us a little bit about that report and what it actually entails and includes?
Our report is specifically focused on the countries that are combining high levels of climate vulnerability with high levels of conflict. There are 15 or 16 countries in the world that represent about 60% of humanitarian need, and they're marked by conflict and by climate crisis. Somalia would be an example, Central African Republic, Ethiopia. These are climate-stressed countries that in the main have contributed very little to overall carbon emissions, but are suffering from very high levels of climate vulnerability and very low levels of investment in climate resilience.
What kind of solutions are presented in the report? What does it say needs to be done?
It's a really clear action plan. Let's map the climate vulnerability because droughts, floods, they're different in different parts of these countries. So we need proper risk mapping. We need real investment in innovation about what adaptation means. How can farming communities sustain their livelihoods? How can urban communities be insulated from the dangers of the climate crisis? Thirdly, fragile and conflict states need you to work through civil society, through community, not just through traditional government mechanisms. And then there's a final aspect to this. These countries need humanitarian aid, but they need climate finance.
Okay, and what makes this COP difference, this climate conference, any different to others? Because in the past, there's been a lot of commitments, but there hasn't been much action.
What we know is different is that the world has changed. We're living with the climate crisis now. If you go to Afghanistan, if you go to Somalia, our clients are dealing with the climate crisis today. And no previous COP has ever addressed the issue of climate vulnerability and conflict. That's what we need to see changed.
Just tell us a little bit more about what the consequences of inaction are for these more vulnerable countries and communities.
I mean, the worst case scenarios are obvious. Climate change exacerbates resource stress exacerbates conflict exacerbates the flow of people, and you end up with an unmanageable situation. Now, in Europe, there's a double challenge, because obviously there is a decarbonisation challenge for national security reasons post the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but there's also the global responsibility that Europe needs to fulfill. And that's not just a moral responsibility, it's a geostrategic responsibility. And we'll be arguing it's well past time for that to happen.
David Miliband, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Let's go back to the Middle East, where the war has unintended consequences for the West Bank. Many European tourists used to travel to the Holy Land to celebrate Christmas, with Bethlehem being the major attraction. But today, Bethlehem has been severely impacted by the ongoing war in Gaza, as scared European visitors are staying at home. Hotels had reservations until June 2024. All were cancelled. Locals are left with empty streets, shops, restaurants, and a bleak economic outlook. As far as Christmas is concerned, celebrations have been cancelled as well, and will be limited to small religious ceremonies. Well, this year, everything is different. That's it for this edition. I'm Stefan Grobe. Thank you for watching. Have an excellent week.